Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I'm your host, Jim Gramm. Alongside me is my co-host, Billy Brandt. On this week's show, we're going to go over some of the top headlines in the world of mixed martial arts, and we're also going to recap UFC 192 from this past Saturday in Houston, Texas, at the Toyota Center. I'm your host, Jim Gramm. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Gramm. He is Billy Brandt. You can follow him on Twitter at WBrandt21. And I guess the biggest news we'll start out here this week, Billy, is TJ Dillashaw, UFC bantamweight champion. And amidst the back and forth of the reigniting of Dwayne Bang Ludwig against mainly Uriah Faber, but you can kind of say alpha male as a large as a team there in Sacramento, California. And I think a way to just avoid this drama, Billy, TJ Dillashaw has just decided to leave this situation and has decided to move his full-time training camp, at least for this fight against Dominic Cruz, to Colorado, but not Dwayne Bang's gym. He is going with the Team Elevation, which features such fighters as Kat Zingano, Nate Marquardt, Brandon Thatch, and Neil Magny. They mainly train out of the Easton Training Center in Denver, Colorado, and I think they also split time in a couple other facilities, but that's the main facility they train out of. So TJ Dillashaw, I guess, will stay in Colorado, very similar. He's used to that. Dwayne Bangs is in Broomfield, Colorado, which is just outside of Denver. It's a suburb. So in terms of elevation and at altitude and all that stuff, he should be very comfortable training with those guys there. And I honestly think that it's a pretty good move overall, regardless of the politics. For him, to me, it's not a step down at all. And then he kind of removes himself from a situation where he's caught in between his friend and mentor and, you know, his coach. And I just think he just wanted out of that situation and he didn't want to feel bad anymore. So he decided to leave himself from that situation. And could he return at some time to alpha male? Probably. I find it hard to believe that. And same thing with Dwayne. I find it hard to believe either would say, no, don't come back. But I actually sometimes if you don't see a good situation, you got to just get out of it. And so I kind of applaud TJ for just getting out of this situation, avoiding drama, because you're trying to be a fighter. You're trying to look out for yourself. And sure, you have friends in the sport, but at the end of the day, it is an individual sport and you got to look out for number one. And that's what Dillashaw is doing right here.
Yeah, just like that. It's not a team sport at all. And when you're going into the by far biggest fight of your life with Dominic Cruz, you have no time for all these politics between Faber and Ludwig and all this stuff. You just got to focus on getting that puzzle, which is Cruz. I mean, Connor called this whole thing, so I'm not surprised that TJ would leave, but it does. It just makes the most sense for him. There's no reason to get caught up in this extra drama. He's in the prime of his career. He's going to make a crazy title run, probably, it looks like. If he gets through Cruz, I don't know who's going to beat him at this point. So for Dillashaw, this is a big time. He just needs to take all that aside and just focus on getting his fights out of the way.
Now, we haven't heard too many comments, at least I haven't seen, from Faber or Ludwig yet. This literally, I believe, just happened yesterday. Yeah. So I would imagine that they'll probably reach for comment here pretty seriously. I would say this hurts Dwayne more than it hurts alpha male. I think alpha male is going to be just fine. People are still going to be trying to train out there with the fellows in Sacramento. But Dwayne didn't have really that many other guys kind of flying over to train with him there in Colorado. And now, of course, you add in the allegations that Faber has said, which, again, we believe are mostly true. I think that's really going to hurt him, at least as a pro, like, MMA coach. It may not hurt his business just running his gym with people coming in and out in the greater Denver area. But in terms of him, coaching guys in big organizations like the UFC and Bellator, I would say it hurts that reputation more than anything.
Yeah, but I think I've heard some stuff where he doesn't really want to be in the business of coaching like professional fighters anymore. He's trying to just run his gym for like the MMA community or martial arts community, as he says. So for him, I'm sure he's still going to work with TJ. He said he's still going to spend time with him, I think, a little bit. I'm not sure how much. I know he's mainly at that team, but I think Dwayne Lud will be fine. I'm pretty sure he knows what he wants to do. And after that whole alpha male run and all this hype, I'm sure he's got a lot of people wanting to come train.
Now, just quickly looking over a record report here from Team Alpha Male. Again, they got coaches such as Lester Bowling and Elliot Marshall. Those are two of the head coaches there. And in the article, it does say that he doesn't rule out a potential coming back with the team. But like I said, it does look that he's trying to kind of move on from the situation. And kind of now, maybe with them not training with each other, it may open up a possibility of him fighting Faber now that they're not exclusively training with each other. But again, how many chances does Faber get at the bantamweight title? But and regardless whether TJ wants it, Faber still might not do it regardless.
I think for Faber, this is his best chance to get one last shot. I mean, if he gets through Cruz, or honestly, not trying to hope for the worst here or something happens, but we don't know if Cruz will make it to that fight. He has a history, so I'm a little worried about that fight happening anyway with Cruz Dillashaw. If Faber steps in, that fight will sell so much with all this behind it.
Now, we got some other news. Speaking of the Nevada State Athletic Commission here, after an initial lifetime ban by the state of Nevada on the former Pride middleweight and Grand Prix champion Wanderlei Silva, of course, they reversed that decision a few months ago. Now they're doing a hearing to see how long his actual non-lifetime suspension will be. Silva is officially, as of right now, retired. He doesn't really care about the appeal process. He just wants to get the hearing done, and it appears as though so does the Nevada State Athletic Commission. So their hearing is scheduled for October 29th. So we'll find out what happens here with Wanderlei Silva. And the reason this is important to me is because he already tried to kind of do that ambassador thing with Bellator and kind of join, like, going to the Fan Fest and promoting the brand. So as soon as this suspension can get over, he can get out his UFC contract and kind of do what he wants to do. And if he still wants to do the Bellator thing, great. Obviously, I can't believe Bellator wouldn't re-extend that offer to him. But I think this is short important because there's certain things he couldn't do because he's all still tied up in this, and he just wants this to be done, and so he can kind of move on to the next stage of his career.
If he gets through all this and gets out of it and is able to fight again, I really wouldn't be surprised to see him fighting in this new organization where they bring Fedor back. I mean, that seems like the most plausible thing. If, though, is a big word because he has a lot of barriers to break through, and he's not the youngest anymore, so a lot of suspensions could be a lifetime ban for him.
Speaking of Fedor, that brings us right to our next article. And Fedor said he wanted to fight the best. Isn't that right, Billy?
He got the best, all right.
He got the best. And 1-0 Jaydeep Singh for his first fight on the New Year's Eve Japanese MMA card featured on Spike TV will be his first fight.
This makes me so less excited for Fedor's return. I mean, at first you think, maybe he wants to come back, really make a run. Now it looks like he just came to make a couple dollars.
Yeah, reports are obviously, I believe he's getting paid $2.5 million for 3 fights, is what it looks like. Which is
fighting 1-0,
and you're gonna one of them being against a 1-0 guy who
I think I read his kickboxing record was like 0-3 or something. So
even his kickboxing record, he doesn't have a win.
It's I don't know what to think of this whole thing. It really just put the fire out for the whole excitement.
Do you think they got a list of heavyweights that have fought in Japan and just kind of put their finger and went, this guy,
the lottery pick they pulled,
right? I mean, how do you come up with a 1-0 guy? He's, regardless of how good Fedor actually is, he's fought over 40 times professionally. Like, you don't typically match up guys who have that many pro fights against a 1-0 guy.
You might as well give him an amateur fight to warm up.
Yeah. I mean, even if Fedor was 20-20, you still wouldn't match him up against a guy that's 1-0.
Never. There's not much I can say about this. It's so ridiculous.
I still will probably watch the event because I think Bellator is going to put some
unfortunately
stuff. Yeah, but I'm sorry. I thought it was a 2-fight deal. I said 3-fight. It is officially a 2-fight deal. I misspoke on that, so I will correct myself there. But it is, I think, reported somewhere around $2 million. But I'm getting the 2-fight deal on the junkie thing. I thought there might have been an option for a third, but yeah. So he'll at least have one more fight after this with this organization.
I'm gonna be real honest. At this point, I'm rooting for Jaydeep. That's the only thing I'm rooting for now, and it's the only thing that'd make this all worth it.
Here's the one caveat though. If Singh somehow pulls the upset, he has to retire, right? You can't come back from losing to a 1-0 fighter. I don't care what stage he's at in his career, you don't really come back from that.
Or you get a Bellator heavyweight title shot.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Or
I mean,
Kimbo Slice.
or Kimbo's,
Let's not
yeah.
forget, they're all on the table.
At least Kimbo has some caveat to it.
I would have
right?
rather had Kimbo, 100%.
Yeah.
A, he's had more fights.
Yeah.
B, he has a bigger name. Like, it makes it exciting a little bit. I think Kimbo's, I don't want to say better than this guy, but I don't know. It makes it more exciting. He's had more experience in the cage.
He's probably better than Kimbo's probably better than.
Let's try to be nice.
All right. Real quickly, this may not seem big to most people here. This
just
fight,
as big as Fedor's next fight.
just same level of competition here. Sohee Ham is taking on Courtney Casey here for UFC Fight Night 79. Now, normally the fight like this maybe wouldn't make our headlines, but I really liked Courtney Casey's fight against Joanne Calderwood. I thought coming in on short notice, going into enemy territory in Scotland against, Scotland's girl and Joanne Calderwood, and putting that type of performance, I thought was rather impressive. And now she's kind of doing the same thing once again. Instead, she's fighting Sohee Ham in her home country of Korea, flying all the way to Korea again. And again, not making that much money. So once again, I give a lot of credit to Courtney Casey. At least this time it's not on short notice. But man, Courtney Casey willing to do whatever it takes to fight in the UFC.
Yeah, I give her all the credit in the world for going and taking all these fights. These are stuff that a lot of people wouldn't do. A short notice in someone's home country and then right back to another just someone's home country, like especially somewhere like that. That's so I don't know if the UFC's ever been there before, but it's big for her, and I really like it. I like seeing that type of stuff. It shows it's like a fighter's fighter. She'll fight anyone, anywhere. So I'm excited for that fight.
And yes, it is the first time they've been to Korea. So we have that as well. All right, last bit of news. It's not UFC. It's actually Bellator. The fight we thought we were going to get here in just 2 weeks, October 23rd at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, will still air. However, it loses its huge main event that you and I were super excited about for the bantamweight title between Eduardo Dantas and Marcus Galvão. And it looks as though that Dantas has suffered an injury, and so he will be out. It looks as though they're going to roll with the main event of Brandon Halsey against Javier Carvalho for the vacant middleweight title, since Halsey's technically not the champion anymore. So that will be the main event. So the main event still looks pretty solid. Of course, we get a big matchup with Brendan Ward, who I really like. Yeah. And, of course, the guy you're a huge fan of here, Billy, and Michael Venom Page. He will also be on the card. Those are the only fights they show on the main card now. Looking over the undercard, they got a couple guys that probably could bump up. Matt Bessette's had some success in the Bellator cage. Matt Secor was on the Ultimate Fighter not too long ago. I would imagine one of those two fights may get bumped up. They could roll with a 3-fight main card, but I'd probably bump one of those guys up.
For sure, you got to make that a 4, especially when they don't air any of the prelims or anything. You might as well to make it a good little time slot. But it's a big hit for this Bellator card. I mean, it is a big hit. I can't act like it's not, but the card, for me, no matter what, I'm going to watch because of Michael Page. I'm that big of a fan of that guy, so I'd also encourage everyone else, if you're like, whatever, it's a Bellator fight, watch that guy fight. Just take a minute. Or all these guys, really. There's a lot of good talent on here, and a lot of these other Bellator events don't get as much as the other ones, but they do have good and exciting fights.
Well, yeah, hopefully Dantas is not out long. It doesn't say how long he's going to be out for. Actually, does it even say the injury?
I haven't seen anything.
This is according, again, to MMA Junkie. It doesn't appear as though they said the injury, and they said a new date hasn't been set for rescheduling, nor if a replacement is there. So we'll see, I guess, what goes on. The fact that they're not naming the injury, I feel like it can't be that serious then.
Yeah. I'm assuming this is really minor, and it'll only be maybe a couple months or something. I don't know what other events they have lined up, but I feel like we will see that fight soon after that.
Hopefully. I wonder, let's see, I guess it would be, because that Cato Manhoef card's not that long after. I was thinking if it could be moved to that, because that's technically not a title fight.
What a card that would be.
If not, it could be their headline for their first event in 2016.
If they put that on there, would that main headline it? Or no, you'd still have to sell Manhoef.
No, I think that would headline it. But again, they'd have to make this decision rather quickly because, like I said, I think if that fight was supposed to be on the 23rd, I thought the Cato fight was on like the 17th.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The delay might not be enough turnaround, they might just try to book it in 2016 and not try to force any Dantes to do it.
Yeah, which that's also good. I mean, I think it'll be a big fight to kick off the year for them at least.
All right, let's get to UFC 192. As you can tell, a slow week this week for MMA action, as there's no fights this weekend for any major organization. Then there's World Series of Fighting on the 17th, and there's not anything again till the 23rd with Bellator we just talked about, and then of course the 24th, the Dublin fight night card.
What are we gonna do with our lives?
I don't know, man.
It's gonna be weird.
So basically, no fights for 2 weeks.
I'll be hibernating.
I don't even think there's really like a big fight on Access or anything.
Nothing I can think of that sticks out.
Oh, speaking of Access, real quickly, we got to interview Andrea KGB just a week or two ago about her win at Invicta. You see the reports. Her next fight, as she said on the interview, will be with Legacy Fighting, and she thought it was going to be for a shot at their flyweight women's title, but no, it is actually for the flyweights women's title. So she'll actually be fighting for the Legacy Championship coming up in December. So we'll look forward to getting her back on the show about that fight as well. And so there could be a chance, Billy, she could be the Legacy Fighting Champion and the Invicta Champion pretty soon here.
It's impressive.
That would be pretty impressive if she could pull that off.
I hope she can, because that'd be really impressive.
I feel like if she pulls something off like that, we talked about in the interview, you're willing to wait for a 125 division in the UFC. Somebody doing something like that at 125 could force the hand of the UFC.
Why not? You have both the other sides.
I just feel it's inevitable because there are some girls that are cutting too much weight for 115 and some girls that are too small for 135. I think it's kind of inevitable. There's going to be a division that meets in the middle.
100%. And women's MMA just keeps on growing, and Ronda keeps getting bigger, which the whole thing gets bigger. You get a dominant champ at 115 like Joanna that keeps getting bigger. I don't see why not.
And that's another reason too. Dominant champions. If all the divisions are cleared out and they beat everybody, they got to go to a next division. You open up a 125. Maybe you have a little more fair game because you get some of the girls at 35, some of them 115, and that may actually be a pretty competitive division. So there could be that reason too, just to make it more competitive, especially like you said, if you got two girls just running train on
and then
everybody.
You got a girl coming over that's a champ in different big organizations for that. Like, it seemed, like you said, it's inevitable. It's going to happen eventually. It keeps growing, and I can't wait for it.
So hopefully we'll see. I honestly think that she did lose to Roxanne, so I think Roxanne should get the next shot for Invicta at 125. But if she goes in there and wins the Legacy Championship, I wouldn't be surprised that she faces, they haven't announced it, but I'd like to see Roxanne against Barb Honchak. That's the 125 division for there. And for Barb, honestly, we've interviewed Barb on the show a couple of times. She's mentioned she doesn't cut that much weight to get to 125. In fact, if you look at some of her weigh-ins, she's weighed in at 122, 123. So I have a feeling that Barb could make 115. And I have a feeling that if Barb win or lose, she might do one more fight in Invicta, and I feel like she might try to get to 115 herself to get in the UFC.
It's not a bad
And I feel
call.
like she can do it too.
It's if you're weighing in under already, there's a good chance you could probably make that cut because no one's cutting more than they need to, So I wouldn't be surprised. That'd be exciting and a good home for her.
All right, went off topic a little bit, but we are talking about UFC 192 here. Let's take a look at the undercard real quick before we get to the main card. Of course, a couple performances everyone's talking about. Of course, Sage Northcutt, the young kid, 19 years old, just out of high school, the karate prodigy. He comes into the picture taking on Francisco Trevino, and the reason this was a good fight, and because he took advantage of a situation. It wasn't just simply he went in there, threw a big kick, threw a big punch, and got the knockout. The dude slipped, he saw it, capitalized, and just went into the kill mode.
Yeah, he has that killer instinct. He's not just a technical karate fighter that finds his targets. Like, he has that instinct. He'll go after it, and like you said, it's not like a clean knockout. He just found a little option, and he took that win. And I mean, this kid, I am really excited for. At first, I seen a lot of hype coming into him coming in. We talked about it, and I didn't know too much about him, but definitely a good first impression. And then his flip goes viral on the internet. So
then he does, the crazy flip post fight. So big fight for him. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets another fight quick. I mean,
19?
Yeah, it was 57 seconds into this round.
That's absolutely insane. Yeah, he could fight soon. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him get bigger fights quick, because if someone's injured, you're going to see him be ready to go.
Also very impressive, Sergio Pettis defeating Chris Carriezao in the flyweight division is huge. That's a big victory, especially Sergio coming off a loss. As we know, Carriezao just fought for the title last year for the flyweight title. So for Sergio to go in there and beat a guy the caliber of Chris Carriazo is really big, especially, like I said, his re-flyweight debut or his UFC flyweight debut was not great. He didn't look that good. Takes on a better guy, in my opinion, than the guy he fought in his debut, and is able to come out and get the victory. And I think that's a really big deal because we saw there's a big article on Sheerdog that's gaining some traction about folding the flyweight division, citing kind of lack of contenders and lack of excitement. But I feel like Sergio Pettis is a guy that can bring some excitement to this division. So that's why I think it's a big deal he got this victory last weekend.
There's no doubt about it. Seeing Sergio come in as young as he did and be as good as he did, I think we all kind of had this hope that he would just be this great champion eventually. If you look at how good Pettis is and him coming in that young, it seemed inevitable. And this is a huge win for him to get back on that streak. Even the last fight, the loss to but like it seemed like he was dominating and taking control of the fights, and then he just slips up or has a little mistake. But for him, this is a huge win, and I think he'll come into his full potential, and we'll see him be a true contender.
That last fight we're referring to was against Ryan Benoit, where he got knocked out in the second round. That was at UFC 185. So, yeah, like I said, big bounce back for him. Also, Derek Lewis gets a bounce back win as he takes out Victor Pesca, knocking him out in the third round. Also, we finally saw the post-tough debut of Rose Namajunas, and she did not disappoint, submitting Angela Hill in the first round. And hopefully, because she had the fight scheduled earlier this year, it got delayed, then she got Angela Hill, beat her. Hopefully we can see Rose quicker now. We shouldn't be waiting 10 months for this, and I'm sure she was frustrated. You could tell she was emotional in the cage, but she is a fighter in this division that I think can really do some things, not just with her skill level, but with her aggressive nature, the way she puts pressure on people. And I hopefully like to see her take on. We already know Paige has already booked her next fight against Joanne. That would have been a good fight, but I'd like to see Rose Randa. I think that's the fight that has to happen.
I'm just so
here.
glad she's back and winning. Since that division came in, we've all said, like, whenever we're talking about big fights, like, oh, I'd love to see her fight Rose. I'd love to see her fight Rose, but it was so long since that debut. But now she comes in, you remember how good she is. So I think now we'll start seeing her quicker, and she will get those big fights. And I wouldn't be surprised if she fights for a title shot next year.
Adriano Martins, another victory for him. This guy is just on a roll right now. Continues as he takes out Makhachev here.
Cerrone fight. He's had a really good run in the UFC.
He has now won 3 in a row since losing to Cerrone, including 2 finishes. Another knockout for Martins, knocking out Makhachev here in the first round. He looked really good. He got a performance of the night bonus too, like that out of him. And to me, the also deserving of performance tonight. What an upset by, to me, Albert Tumanov against Alan Joboy. I don't know what Alan Joboy. That doesn't look like the guy I remember, Billy. No, he looked completely out of his game. And Tumanov, I tell you what, he looked really good and got a first-round finish against Joboy. A big deal to me. A huge win for him.
I was preaching Joboy to people like, this dude is legit. He's this. Something was off. I don't know if it's because he got that Versace modeling deal or whatever he got, but something happened to Joboy that he forgot about fighting a little bit, because that threw me off. I thought this dude was like the future. He looked really good in all his previous fights, so this one blew me away. But
and even, like I said, some kind of almost a hometown fight for him growing up in Lafayette, not that far from Houston, the Texas-Louisiana border. So I'm sure he had a lot of friends and family in attendance, especially since he got that fight canceled in Louisiana a couple of months ago. He was supposed to fight on that card. So I'm sure a lot of those friends and family that were going to that fight in Narlands came over here to this fight here in Houston. And I don't know if it was because of that pressure, fighting in front of friends and family again or what, but yeah, he did not show up in Houston.
I mean, I don't want to take all the credit away from Tumanov either, because I mean, that to come out and get that win, you got the job done. Mm-hmm. Major credit to you, but definitely off from Joboy, but I expect him to bounce back fully.
Yair Rodriguez, the young kid here out of tough Latin America, another victory for him, his second in a row, taking out Daniel Hooker. And while this was a good performance, I think Hooker did show some things that you can pressure this guy. You can maybe back him up. He may be more apt to not press forward as much, and I think that's something he's going to have to adjust. Still young in his career, but that was the one thing Hooker did right. What he did wrong was he didn't follow it up with a lot of combinations. And so while Yair looked good, Daniel Hooker definitely didn't do himself any favors in this fight.
I mean, I also want to say for Yair, to give him a little more credit, I'm pretty sure he broke his foot really early in the fight.
Yeah, there was that too, which they showed in the post-fight, and I'm not discrediting that, but I mean, if you look at how much Hooker was actually advancing this fight, and if you actually look at total striking, he did outstrike Rodriguez. I think probably because of that time he was on the ground. But overall, he did have problems chasing him down. Obviously, Rodriguez landed the more explosive and power shots too. And that makes a big difference when you look at significant strikes of 52-19. And to me, that's the big difference of the fight. If you're not going to get power shots, you got to have output. And Hooker didn't have that output.
100%. We seen that in the was it the Bobby Green Barboza fight where he shook everything off? But if you're not landing the output and putting the shots, it doesn't matter. But Yair definitely landed his shots, and I mean, he threw it was like a bicycle kick. I've never seen that landed big, and his kid's so exciting to watch. He's so young, got injured, pulled it off, still threw it tough through it. So I mean, I look forward to nothing more than seeing this dude's next fight every time.
Right, and like I said, the main reason because of the striking disparity was because that third round where Hooker got the takedown and he actually outstruck him 53-29. Though surprisingly, Hooker didn't win any rounds in that fight. I thought Hooker probably would have got the third and the first two to Rodriguez, but I mean either way, it's a win for Yair, however you score it. But it's incredible to kind of when you just look at the stats to see that kind of disparity and. There's one judge that gave Hooker a 28 because there's a 30-26 there by Chris Reed. So either way, yeah, definitely. He's training now in America, so I think that's going to up his training. Obviously, getting better coaches and whatnot. But unfortunately, like you said, yeah, he had that injury, so he actually may be out for a while here.
Yeah, I hope it's not too long. But either way, he's really young. I'm sure he'll recover quick and recover good. And whoever he fights next, I don't know how fast they'll push him, but they definitely know there's some hype around him. But I look forward to that fight.
The next fight of the evening, the first fight on the main card, was in the women's bantamweight division between Jessica Eye and Juliana Pena. Another close fight involving Jessica Eye, and once again, it just didn't go her way as Pena was able to pull this thing out. Looking at the numbers again, very even fight as Pena outstruck Eye 100-77, landed 3 of 6 takedowns. Eye was 1 of 1. And the first round was pretty close. Pena was able to land 2 of her 3 takedowns inside of that round. And also outstrike Jessica Eye 49-22, most likely getting that round. The second round, Jessica Eye was able to catch a kick, take this fight to the ground, showing off some ground and pound of her own, outstriking Pena 35-24. And then in the third round, Jessica got caught early with a takedown by Pena. Pena was able to control the rest of that round, just slightly outstriking Eye 27-20, but it was enough to get the unanimous decision victory 29-27. Of course, there was that point taken away by Jessica in the second round for throwing an illegal knee from bottom to the head of Pena, who was on top of her position. But even with the point taken away, it looks as though Pena got 2 rounds in the book. It might have not mattered anyway. So that point doesn't look as big as it could have been. But once again, this was a fight that Jessica, it seemed like one takedown was the difference. If you go back in a couple other fights, Alexis Davis, Miesha Tate, same way. And we like Jessica. She's great on the show, but it just seems lately, it's hard to correct because it's just one little thing that changes in her fights and then she ends up getting lost. So it's really hard for me to sit here and really criticize her performances, but it's just, I think she just had some bad luck. To be honest, and I credit Juliana Pena, but this is once again kind of bad luck for Jessica Eye.
Yeah, 100%. I'll start first with saying all credit to Pena because I think this fight is really big for her because there's a lot of people like, yeah, she's beating nobodies, but she's for sure the real deal. If you can go out there and get a win either way over Jessica Eye, it's a big win to get. And for Jessica Eye, yeah, she's just that close, but not close. I don't know what it is, almost like Gustafsson at a smaller level where you just take him to the limb, but not quite. And it's tough for her, man. But she's up there competing. I will say for Pena, this shows a lot for her because she's finished all her fights real early. And it shows when she gets in there with the elite, it's not going to be as easy for her.
That to me was the biggest deal, was not only could she hang with a top 10 fighter? Yes. Could she go the distance?
100%.
Yes. Was that knee going to hold up? Yes. Again, the question mark that wasn't answered, though, was the striking. And the few striking exchanges they had, Jessica definitely got the better of Juliana. So that's something that she is still going to have to work on, because if the takedown's not there, at least in this fight, it looks like she still doesn't have a semblance of a stand-up game. And there are some girls in this division that are going to be able to do it. I mean, she takes on somebody like a Misha Tate or a Amanda Nunes or a Kat Zingano. Those are fighters that can keep the fight standing, especially Nunes. I mean, you look at that last fight against Sarah McMahon, we're talking about arguably the best wrestler in the division. Shut her down, got the finish. So she's got to work on that. That's the biggest thing she has to work on.
Yeah, because not only if you can't take Nunes down, good luck striking with her, because you're going to have a tough night.
So far, no one has.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next fight of the evening, flyweight division, Joseph Benavidez against Ali Bogutinov. Despite the long layoff here by Bogutinov, over a year out of action after his suspension from performance-enhancing drugs following his title loss to Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, he looked all right, but Benavidez was just slightly better. And looking at this fight, it was really nothing exciting. I mean, we went a full 15 minutes, and Benavidez was only able to land 48 strikes, just 31 for Bogutinov. It just seemed like neither guy could really get a read on the other. But Benavidez did enough to get the victory. And while this is another win for Joseph Benavidez, I mean, he just seems he's the clear number 2 guy in the world at 125 pounds, is now 4th win in a row, being the likes of Tim Elliott, Dustin Ortiz, John Moraga, and now Bogutinov. It's unfortunate, because in any other division you would say, well, he's ready for a title shot, but he's already lost twice to the champion. And
has he not fought?
He hasn't fought John Dodson. That's a fight I think most people would like to see. And also, I wouldn't mind him against Horiguchi or the young kid Cejudo as well. To me, those are the only 3 fights I see coming up next for him, barring a move back up to 135 just to try it, if he doesn't think he's going to get another shot at Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, because it's going to be really tough for him to get another shot. Not only did he lose the first time, he got the rematch, and Mighty Mouse looked even better with getting that huge finish. So it's really tough for him. I don't know where you go, especially when you're just getting kind of decisions like this, getting by. But I think the best thing for that division maybe is you put those young 2 guys you just named, one of them against him, one of them against Dotson, give him a tough fight like that before you get to Mighty Mouse.
The next fight of the evening in the heavyweight division is Sean Jordan took on Ruslan Magomedov. And I got to tell you, it looked as though early on Sean Jordan sustained an injury. Apparently in between the first and second round, Sean Jordan complained of a broken rib. So it looks like he had some injured rib. And then in the second round, there was a high kick thrown by Magomedov that the toe caught the eye. It was like a toe poke. And I think that really affected his vision moving forward, and also the rib thing. I'm not trying to take away anything from Magomedov, because obviously he probably did something to help cause those injuries, but I thought this was a very impressive performance by Magomedov. It wasn't a finish. We were kind of worried about maybe his lack of finishing skills, but I thought he looked really good. The first round I didn't really like. He was kind of passive. He got Jordan got that takedown, but then in rounds 2 and 3, I mean, just look at the striking numbers as he outstruck Jordan, 33-15 in the second frame, and then 34-16 in the third frame, stopping all 6 of Jordan's takedown attempts in those 2 rounds. I thought he looked like the fresher fighter. He was the better striker in that matchup, and the only thing I didn't really like out of Magomedov was the slow start. And also, I would have liked to seen a little more output. He was clearly outstriking Jordan and get the better of him, but I would have liked to seen a little more punches, and he maybe could have got a finish against Sean Jordan. That's the only negative, really, to me, from Magomedov, and what was actually a really good performance and a huge upset victory in my book.
Yeah, it is definitely a big upset, and to get a win like that, we talked about going into this fight, you got to have the finishing power. That's why we kind of gave Jordan that X factor, and we didn't know if he did or he'd be able to get by and get the decision on someone like that, but he got the job done. But in the heavyweight division right now, if you want to make a name, you got to be getting these big finishes, and you got to be doing something special. I mean, it looks good. You get the win, you move forward, but no one's going to be really like, all right, this dude's next fight, watch out for him,
Absolutely. And like I said, those are some things he has to work on. And for Sean Jordan, I don't think he's done yet. I think it legitimately was an injury, because that's not the guy we seen on this little streak he was on. That's not the same dude I remember going into the most of his fights. So I do think he was affected by an injury. And obviously, like I said, that toe poke there towards the end, you could tell his eyes were kind of bleeding a little bit. You could tell he wasn't seeing good. And he went into wrestling mode, which to me is not what he's exclusively good at.
Now, when you see that hook kick knockout.
Yeah. So I think Sean Jordan will be back. But like I said, a huge win for Ruslan. And I'm trying to think of someone he could take on here. Probably not Roy Nelson, but
I want Roy Nelson to just have another fight, but it'd be a good step back. So honestly,
yeah,
I think there's probably a better name for it, but I wouldn't be mad if that was the case.
Oh, you know what? A fight against Stefan Struve would be pretty good.
100%.
I think that'd be a good fight for both these guys, because you give Struve another chance to kind of reprove himself, and then I know 6'3" doesn't seem tall in comparison to Stefan Struve, but 6'3" is a pretty good height. He looks like a pretty tall and lanky guy. So I think him against Struve actually would be a pretty good matchup. And they're both, I believe, under 30. I don't think Magomedov's that old. Let me double check his age here. Let's see. He was born in 86. So yeah, he's 29. Going to be 30 here coming up in November. So yeah, especially for the heavyweight division, 30 is the new 25.
You're good in heavyweight.
In the heavyweight division. So yeah, I think that'd be a good matchup if Struve doesn't already have something booked.
Yeah, 100% for Struve. He needs to get back on that right track, and I think that's a good fight for him. They both are pretty young for that division, so I'd love to see that.
Co-main events of the evening after, of course, we all know Tyron Woodley and his fight against Johnny Hendricks got canceled. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But Ryan Bader did fight Sugar Rashad Evans, his first fight in about 2 years. And looking over this fight here, Billy, the thing I don't get, was it a win by Ryan Bader? Yes, I don't think I'm disputing that. But maybe it was Rogan and Goldberg. I don't know how many other people feel about this, but they made it seem like Ryan Bader did the greatest thing he's ever done in his career. And looking over these numbers, I mean, he landed 55 strikes in 15 minutes, which was definitely more than Evans, as he outstruck him 55-27. He was only 1 for 6 on his takedowns. When you look at numbers like that, the third round was good, outstriking him 25-7. I think he definitely won that third round, and to me, that was the one round that you could clearly say like he for sure won. The other 2 rounds were pretty close. I mean, first round he only struck him out by 7, second round 3. But the big thing to me is, other than a couple of sneaky right hands he had, there was really nothing significant done in this fight. And to me, that's why I don't applaud it as a great performance, because at the end of the day, Rashad Evans still looked pretty fresh. And Evans, yeah, would you have liked to see more output? Yes, but I think at the same time, he was just trying to get through 15 minutes, I think, without hurting himself. And 100%. I think he was just trying to go out there and test in the waters. He didn't want to do anything to overdo himself. So at the same time, was it a win from Ryan Bader? Yes, but I don't think it should be heralded as Ryan Bader's greatest performance of his career. I don't think it's anywhere close to his best fight.
Yeah, I for sure don't think that. And I mean, I love Joe Rogan, but sometimes he gets caught up in things. And the way he was talking about Bader striking, like it was just this new, like, I don't really buy into it. I think Rashad looked really hesitant. He's 36, coming off 2 years of not fighting. I mean, I don't want to say I'm not that impressed. Rashad is good. It's a good win for Bader. But this wasn't a fight where I'm like, you know what, Bader put it together, like they were saying. Like, Bader's finally clicking. He's going to be the elite now. It just didn't do it for me. I think he got by this fight barely. But I think Rashad was barely there too.
Yeah, Rashad definitely, I think his next fight will be the true tale if he decides to continue fighting. But the reason even to me this performance gets overshadowed is because we're going to get to the main event here in just a second, how those 2 guys fight. And I didn't see anything like that in Ryan Bader.
If you were telling me,
because he was going to fight the winner of that fight, potentially. And as of right now, if you just look at the performances they had at UFC 192, whether he fights Gustafsson or Daniel Cormier next, how do you like his chances against those 2?
If you're going to tell me you can watch that fight and watch the main event and say, now these 2 winners are going to fight each other, there's not a person in the world that's going to be like, watch out for Bader.
Exactly.
Never. Like, he didn't do nothing. He didn't put the pressure. He landed a couple right hands, but it wasn't like nothing even devastating. Rashad was, I don't think, barely ever really wobbled. I mean, there was nothing that showed it. I don't think he could beat Cormier or Gustafsson.
Yeah, and let's get to that fight. This could end up being, I know a lot of people are probably still going to go with Rory and Robbie for fight of the year, but this one may take the cake here, Billy, at UFC 192. And to me,
close.
What saved this main card, this was not that great of a night for main card fights. There were some good undercard fights, as we alluded to earlier, but to me, this main event saved UFC 192, was the perfect billing, and just what a performance by these two guys. Just looking over the stats, 219 to 130 in favor of Daniel Cormier. And here's the thing I love to see: output, Billy, output. I always talk about output here. 364 thrown strikes for DC, 264 thrown strikes for Gustafsson. He was also successful in 1 of 7 takedowns. Cormier was 1 of 5 takedowns. Who would like to see Gustafsson try for more takedowns in this fight? Who would have thought that? And just looking over this battle, the first round clearly went to DC. He got that takedown, smothered the Mauler 56-7. That's where the main part of that striking disparity went there. Round 2, close round. Gustafsson snuts when he snuck in his takedown, 36-30 in favor of DC Daniel Cormier. Third round, I would have given the second round to Gus, so I had it 1-run. Third round, back to Cormier again. Gonna just kept on coming, striking 45-34 in that round, striking for Cormier. Round 4 would have gave the Gus. He came back strong. He did push the pace a little bit, trying 3 takedowns. Didn't get one. Did outstrike him 37-33. And then the second round, I don't think it was lack of conditioning or anything. I think he kind of, I don't know. I think his head was maybe a little rattled or something.
Uppercuts.
Wasn't off base a little bit. And Cormier, once again, I put the hammer down in the 5th round, clamped that round, and clamped the fight, in my opinion. And the numbers back that up as he outstruck Gustafsson 49-22, winning this fight. Split decision. One judge had it 3-2 for Gustafsson. The other 2 judges had it 4-1 for DC and 3-2 for DC, respectively. And it's hard to decision the champ, but just DC definitely proved a lot of things. 1, he doesn't have to out wrestle people to beat him. 2, he has a hell of a chin. And 3, despite him having a size disadvantage with height and reach with just about most people here in this light heavyweight division, he doesn't let that bother him. He just keeps coming forward. And I think that willingness to keep coming forward and striking, obviously, and just to me, really changed Gustafsson's game plan. I don't think he expected that at all from DC. I don't think he expected him, first of all, to strike with him from that long, 1, and 2, to come at him like that with those power shots and be able to take the shots that Gustafsson was throwing at him as well.
When you got Gustafsson shooting takedowns on Cormier, you're in some trouble. I mean, this fight blew me away for Daniel Cormier. One thing I'll take from it is he talked about in the Jones fight, he definitely won some rounds, and he kind of stalled towards the end, and that's what losing that fight. Jones takes over in the last couple rounds. He gets a little tired. He definitely showed he's not letting that happen no more. There was no sign of it. He kept coming forward, kept throwing them punches every second of this fight. And I just really want to talk about the excellence of Daniel Cormier because people give Jones so much credit, the runs he ran, the guys he beat. I think Cormier can just about beat all those guys as well, and I think he's showing it. Even guys like Rumble, who I think might be better than some of the guys Jones took on. And I think I don't want to buy into this hype, but I really want to see that rematch now, and it builds it up so much. I think Cormier is that excellent. I mean, we're talking about slamming guys at heavyweight, comes down to 205, dominates these guys. Like, it's absolutely amazing. What a war. All credit for Gustafsson. I really feel bad for him because he's going to kind of be remembered as that guy that took every champ to their limit but just couldn't quite get it done. But he's absolutely amazing. And I don't know, man. I take a lot away from this for Cormier, and he won me over as a fan for life. He went out there, didn't leave off the pressure for a minute, kept coming forward, kept throwing, and there's not much more I can say about the guy, but he won me over for life.
And I think if people were upset that Gustafsson got a shot coming off a loss, you got to say the UFC made the right call here. Like, you can't debate with the results of the quality of fights and the fact that he almost won
by far. And like, if you think Gustafsson shouldn't have got the shot, watch the co-main event because that was your other option.
Yep. Absolutely.
Not a chance.
So it looks as though we're going to get Bader DC probably next for the title. Jones is, again, that's still up in the air whether or not he comes back, whether his first fight back is for the title, you know, how they're going to, so quote unquote, punish John Jones. So I have a feeling that DC Bader will happen next. And then maybe Jones enters the picture. His first fight's a title. Maybe he takes on somebody else. I don't know. But for people to think that the next fight for DC is John Jones, as I think a little too optimistic.
I think that, but then again, it's like, I think it depends on DC. This was a war. So if he needs off a few good months or something, we might see that, but more probably that there's one fight in between that.
Yeah, what I would say the earliest even hint this fight could happen would maybe be this the Super Bowl card. And that would to me be the earliest it could happen. More realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see DC fighting until April, to be quite honest. That's the thinking I'm getting.
When you get in a war like that, let's not forget what's even more amazing. DC is 38.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I mean, I can't say enough about this guy, but yeah, I don't think we'll see him again for a few months, but what a war for him.
Yeah, he was born in 1979. I think him and Mark Hunt and Dan Henderson, I think, are the only guys that were born in the 70s left in the UFC.
And look at him, world champ, taking out all these guys. I mean, Gustafsson's pretty young.
Yeah, I believe he's 27 now. Let me double check on this. Yeah, he'll be turning 28 in January.
Cormier is a monster. You can't break that guy's pace. You just can't. Gustafsson looked really good. He's great. Maybe now they run that rumble back fight again. There's a lot of questions around it with the headbutt, knockout, all that stuff. Kind of get that all figured out, but great fight for him. Both these guys.
I wouldn't oppose to be now the matchup he was supposed to take on earlier this year before they ended up giving title shot. He was supposed to fight Glover Teixeira. Now I know Teixeira has the fight coming up against Cummings, but I wouldn't be opposed to the winner or loser, really, regardless. One of those guys taking on Gustafsson Nest or even OSP, because obviously Gustafsson's probably going to stand. So I think either way, though, that's probably to me what's probably next for Alexander Gustafsson.
I did see a report. Bader said if he doesn't get the next shot, like something happens with Jones, he'd like to get that loss back. So maybe we'll see something like that happen for Glover Teixeira. But I don't think that's the case. Like you said, we probably won't see Jones for a while still. So we'll probably see that Bader fight with Cormier first, especially with all the promos they can build of him and Bader going back and forth already.
All right, let's get to what we kind of skipped over real quickly, what was supposed to be the Kona main event, Tyron Woodley against Johnny Hendricks. Johnny Hendricks didn't even attempt to weigh in. He was claiming that it was a kidney stone, at least according to his manager. Dana White said he never got anything saying it was a kidney stone. It just appears that, once again, he was just severely dehydrated, just wasn't looking good, and just decided to, instead of going with the weigh-in that he was probably going to miss and show up to a fight he just wasn't going to be 100% for, just didn't show up. And while at the same time you could say, oh, maybe it's cowardly, or he should have just tried to show up or make the fight happen, at the end of the day, I somewhat do applaud Johnny Hendricks for just not even going to it. For now, bear with me for just a sec. If he knew just he wasn't going to make weight, lose his money, lose his purse, he probably was going to be maybe forced up to another weight class anyway. Just why go through it at that point? You're probably going to get, looked at bad. So he took it out. Maybe it's not the greatest PR move, but I think just him personally, the health move, it might have been the best thing, and he can kind of reevaluate this whole situation. Because like I said, regardless, he's going to come away with a bagged stigma. I mean, if he goes in there, misses weight bad, looks like crap in the fight, Woodley dominates him, it's still going to look bad for his career, right? And I think that's what he was thinking. Is like, either way, I'm not coming out of this thing looking good.
I do see what you're saying, and I agree that I think some fighters are too tough for their own good, where it's like, why go in there if you're absolutely drained, can barely walk, take a beating just to like prove some point? If the weight cut was too tough and you just can't make it, sorry, you can't make it, go to 185. Clearly Hendricks has had problems in the past. One time he had to weigh in a couple times, and it's just too much for him. But the thing I don't like is, I don't know how true the whole kidney stone thing is. I think instead of just saying, hey, I couldn't make my weight cut, I didn't have my stuff together, he tried making up this thing, which I don't like that.
Yeah, that I don't like. What he should have done is hold his own press conference or media scrum or something, and just be as serious as possible and just say, look, I'm sorry to the UFC. I'm sorry to Tyron Woodley. I know I'm not going to get paid. He can have some of my money for this fight or whatever if he wants it, but I just can't do it this fight, and I'm ready to face the repercussions. But instead of going out there and giving less than my best, I've decided not to fight. Now, if that would have been his statement,
Cool.
we all would have been like, well, it sucks he's not fighting, but we get it,
100%.
But that's not what went down. Instead, we get weird double talk from his manager. And surprisingly, Johnny Hendricks himself is staying quiet. We get Tyron Woodley, a very candid interview. It's a 3-minute interview on UFC.com with Megan Alvali about, the fight. And she asked him, she goes, would you want to fight Hendricks down the road? And he goes, you know what? He goes, he just left a bad taste in my mouth with this. He goes, honestly, I wouldn't even be interested in fighting him anymore.
No.
And it's because he did it this way and not the way that I described. And so now Tyron says, you know what? He's like, I already beat Carlos Condit. Condit's getting the shot. He goes, yeah, I would have liked to have this fight, but at the end of the day, if they're going to give me a shot, then I'm going to take the shot. He goes, I just feel like I didn't have to fight to get the shot because of the Condit thing. So he goes, now I don't get it. He goes, it sucks, but yeah, he goes, I'm just going to go back to train in Rufus Sport, work out with the guys there. And, when my shot comes, he goes, I'm going to take it.
100%. I think he deserves the shot, even though I would have loved to see him fight. But this whole thing is just, it doesn't look good for Hendricks the way he handled it. Praise to him for not taking the fight and taking no damage he didn't need to, but there's definitely different ways to go about it. Hopefully now, I'm sure the UFC will probably force him up to 185 after this. They're not going to mess around at all. And it's just a bad look. Hendricks has kind of had this thing to him about complaining all the time, all this stuff, and it just doesn't look good for him to not make weight.
Yeah, like I said, it was one thing to not go ahead with the fight, but to kind of almost lie about the reasons. Because again, there's nothing else other than that said he had a kidney stone. And for a young dude his age, that's a athlete, a guy who's been to the top of the hill, world champion. I'm not saying you can't get a kidney stone, but very really, that's not people who are getting kidney stones. I'm not a medical professional or anything, but in my experience, when you hear people have kidney stones, there's usually 50-year-old dudes who are out of overweight.
I don't know enough about it, but I don't see no reason for Dana to lie. What's Dana's reasoning to be like, we didn't get any proof,
Yeah.
There's no reason for him to say that. For him, it looks better on his fighter's half.
Yeah, because if it was, it's a legit reason to cancel the fight. You think if he had a legit reason to cancel his fight, he would say, he wouldn't just go, nah, it's just because you can't make weight.
Yeah.
There would be no reason for him to say it, because at the end of the day, he wants this fight to happen.
Exactly. He wants this fight as much as anyone, and there's no reason for him to be like, I don't know what he's talking about, this kidney stone. There's no reason. So it just makes me believe it, just because I don't see the point of it. And for Hendricks, it makes all the reason to try and make that up, because now you don't look like you're unprofessional or couldn't make weight. It just looks like you had something you couldn't handle. It's out of your control.
All right, so for Johnny Hendricks, probably move up to 185. We'll kind of learn more as the weeks go on what's going to happen with him. Same thing with John Jones. And that's pretty much going to wrap up this week's episode of Beyond the Cage. Next week, we're working for some interviews. We've mentioned this several times here in the last couple months, but it finally happened this past week in the MMA Classic with AJ Hiller. I'm hearing a lot of good things from a lot of my friends here in the memorabilia community. So we're going to try to get him on, talk about what went down there in Syracuse, New York, and get a read on, how stressful it was for him running this event, whether he would do it again or do something similar, and, how everything went with the athletes. Because I did hear a couple people no-showed on him. So that's the main thing I wanted to ask him about is what went down with some of those fighters. I don't want to name them right now because they could be a legitimate reason, but there were a few fighters that did not show up for him there in Syracuse. So we'll try to get that next week as well. So in the meantime, though, before we get to next week's show, we updated our top 10 rankings for the world of mixed martial arts on our Facebook page. So look at our new rankings, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage podcast. First of all, like the page, and second of all, check out the monthly rankings in the notes section. Anything else to add to the show, Billy?
Free Nick Diaz.
All right. Free Nick Diaz. He is Billy Brandt. You can follow him on Twitter at WBrandt21. I am your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. So for Billy Brandt, I am Jim Graham, and thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage.